our next presentation, which is Bullying and the Resilient Child by Dr. Bob Sorensen. Welcome.
Good afternoon. There was no response. Good afternoon. You're going to find out, if you don't already know, that I like to have a little fun with my audience. Is it okay if we interact a little bit? Is it all right if I tell a story every once in a while to illustrate my teaching points? Is it okay if every once in a while I ask you to turn to an interesting, intelligent-looking person seated near you for a brief moment of conversation? Look around and see if that's going to be a problem. And is it okay if every once in a while I find somebody to just interact with or model with or talk about something? And if you don't want to be one of those people that talks in front of the group, I will take subtle signals like avoiding eye contact, like looking down, like reading your handout. I will try to pay attention to those little subtleties in case you're one of those folks. We're going to talk about the issue of bullying, but even more importantly, the issue of raising resilient children who can handle the things that come along in life. Is it possible that you and I as parents actually have less control over the world than we sometimes would like to have in relationship to our children? I remember back to when my oldest daughter was born. Her name is Rebecca. She's 28 years of age now. So it's been a few years since Rebecca was born. But I remember that feeling of holding her in my hands and loving her and wanting to protect her from every bad thing in the universe. I became incredibly motivated once I became a dad to invest more wisely, to take care of things, to try to create a world where she would be loved and revered and taken care of. I wanted to take care of issues of women's rights in a way that I had never thought of before, now that I have a daughter. I wanted to make the world safe. I wanted to make the schools a whole lot better, and I'm still working on that one. But at some point, I had to look around and realize my own limitations, and there are some things I don't have a lot of control over, some aspects of the world and some aspects of media and some aspects of the culture. And eventually I figured out, partly through the raising of Rebecca and then my son and then my other daughter and then my other daughter, is that I need to help build strong kids. I don't just want to try to protect them. I will as best I can. But I need to raise strong kids who can handle whatever life brings along, and that is likely going to include some struggle. Let's hope they're ready for some of that. Whether it's in school, in the neighborhoods, in life, someday as moms and dads, some days as workers out there in the world, hopefully making a difference. And so it's not just about protecting our kids that we're going to be talking about today. We'll talk about that, but we'll also talk about how to help them become that kind of strong kid with that powerful self-efficacy, some of which I saw in those 3 students who were up here talking this morning, some of which I saw in that wonderful school administrator who was talking about building a positive culture, not just punishing the bullies, but dealing with a positive culture in that school that sets some expectations for how we are going to treat each other respectfully and how I can expect to be treated respectfully in this place. That is the fun stuff for me. We're going to be talking about kids with character. Briefly summarized, it's going to include some of these characteristics. Kids that have a deep and abiding respect for themselves. They see themselves as good and valuable human beings and deserving of treatment as good and valuable human beings. Kids who respect adult authority. It's okay that there are some rules in life. It's not all about them getting what they want right now the easy way. There's an awareness and an acceptance of the world as it is and my place as a part of that world. Noticing and caring about the feelings of others. Kids with character don't just think about their own feelings, their own desires, their own selves. They notice the world. And in noticing other people, they have that capacity for empathy, which is the foundation for all emotional intelligence and all social skills, pretty important aspects of which kids are going to be successful human beings. Kids who have values and standards for behavior, their own behavior, first and foremost, and also the behavior of others. There are some ways that we want to treat each other. There are some ways we want and can expect to be treated. These are kids who have this term that I love so much, self-efficacy. Kids that have self-efficacy aren't just the kids who have nice self-esteem. I am a wonderful kid because my mom keeps telling me how great I am. That's one kind of thing, and that's not all bad. Self-efficacy, however, is different. It comes from a different place. The word efficacy comes from the same root as the word effort. Self-efficacy is the recognition that with effort, I can make my life better. With effort, I can make the world a better place for me, for the people I love, and maybe someday I can make the world better for others, for our community, for our nation, for our world. That's the kind of powerful self-efficacy we hope to grow in our children. Last but not least, I would like to help raise a generation of kids who can stand up, both for themselves and for others. Kids who will say, no, I don't like it when you talk to me like that. I would like you to do this instead. No, don't treat my friend like that. That's not how we treat people around here. Can stand up for themselves and for others in a way that makes this school a safe place, this community a safe and good place, this nation a safe and good place, this society a place where really good things happen. But I also need to accept the reality, and the reality is that we live in a world, unlike that beautiful school that I was hearing about this morning, where a whole lot of good work has been going on to build a positive culture. The rest of the culture out there in the world to which our kids are exposed every day is not always as lovely as that. In fact, some of you watch television shows for entertainment that are filled with examples of bullying. The Real Housewives of Toronto. Do they have that yet? There are people that actually find great amusement in watching the kinds of behavior that we are talking about as being destructive and harmful and hurtful to others. Some of you may know that there is a world of video games out there. Raise your hand if you've noticed. Most of those games, not all of them, but most of those games are based around a set of behaviors and actions and images that are astonishingly wrong. When a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kid is given Grand Theft Auto by his grandmother and plays it in front of the family, and everybody knows what these images are, and somehow we don't think this kid is being exposed to images of bullying, to harmful behavior towards others, towards mean-spirited use of power over others. Does anybody listen to music in the modern world? I don't mean the old stuff. If you pay any attention to the lyrics of some of the music out there in the world, and not all. Some of it is beautiful and wonderful and positive and empowering. Great stuff out there in the world today. But a whole lot of attention is going to, and a whole lot of money is going to, some genres of music that talk about women in ways that I don't understand how anybody can accept. Talk about hurtful behavior, are examples of every type of bullying behavior I can even consider. Some things I can't even wrap my head around. And so our kids are exposed to a world where there are things like that all around them, and those, for many kids, are the pervasive models of what it might be like to be a strong adult. Those, for some kids, unless we build an alternative set of models in our homes and in our schools, will be the ideals for what it is that I want to be when I'm a big, powerful, successful human being, something called an adult. We need to create an alternative to some of that. We're going to start with raising resilient children. Oh, I love strong kids, don't you? Yeah. Anybody here have a strong-willed kid? Oh, bless you. Now I know that some of you have strong-willed kids. How many of you like strong-willed kids? They test the limits. They find out what you're made of every once in a while, don't they? They're going to find out where are those limits and how far can I push them. They're going to find out what's dad made of today, what's mom made of today, what's that teacher made of today. We're going to test those limits every once in a while, and I love those strong kids. And it's my theory that if we do a really good job with them in our homes and in our schools, those really strong-willed kids could change the world in a really positive way. They are world changers, or have the capacity for that, don't they? I'd like to help nurture that as much as possible in a whole lot of kids. Well, especially kids that have that sense of value, who have that sense of purpose, who have that sense of right and wrong, who have that sense of empathy, who have that sense of grit, so that they don't give up when things get a little bit difficult. And yet I'm looking out there in the world these days, and I'm seeing a certain pattern of kids who don't always have clear values, and kids who don't always have that stick-to-itiveness and that grit. Kids that don't always have that powerful sense of self-efficacy, that belief that I can make a difference, that with effort I can change my world. I see this, I go all over North America. It's pretty cool. I've been a whole lot of places in the last 6 or 7 weeks. Not too long ago, I was headed down to Mississippi, and I was on my way. I decided I was going to stop at the airport and get a little bite to eat. I needed a little bit of a snack. And don't rat me out here, anybody, please. I was hungry. I had somehow skipped lunch that day. I got down towards the airport. I decided I was going to stop for a little snack, and I'm not supposed to go to fast food restaurants. I'd been told that I'm supposed to eat healthy and organic and local and sustainable, and I'm supposed to be really careful about all these things, but every once in a while, when I am out and about and there's no one directly supervising my behavior, I might make a choice, like I did that day. I decided to go to Wendy's. I was going to get a little bowl of chili. That's not too bad, right? Decided to go to Wendy's, get a little bowl of chili. I got in line behind a few people, and I was watching this little scene, this little interaction in the lobby. There was a 9 or 10-year-old kid wandering around over here. I could tell that he was vaguely connected to his mom over here, and she was with her friend, but they were talking and interacting in the line ahead of me, not making any eye contact with him, not making any verbal contact with him. And he was wandering around touching things and moving here and moving there. He would bounce into the counter. He would bounce into the rope that was supposed to define the line. He came over and bounced into an old lady that was standing in the lobby. He wandered my way. 9 or 10-year-old kids are supposed to know this, aren't they? Don't bounce into that big guy over there. Aren't they supposed to have a basic understanding of such things? Well, this kid had none of those limits, and he came over my way, and he was just stumbling around, and he bounced right into me. And I gave him a little look, but he didn't even seem to notice. He wandered over here, he wandered over there, he came in over and knocked into another person in line, he knocked into me again. Finally, I got my food. I retreated. I got the heck out of the way. Mom and her friend had gone over here and sat down. This kid was still wandering the lobby, doing whatever he wanted to. No one was talking to him. No one was disciplining him. Nobody was interacting with him. Even the people from the restaurant were trying very hard to ignore him. As he went over to the ice machine, they had a little pop machine with ice in the middle. He decided to experiment with the lever right in the middle, which is the ice dispenser. And he decided to push the ice dispenser, and a little bit of ice came out. He thought that was kind of interesting. He pushed it again. Little ice came out. He pushed it and he held it. And with great glee, he watched ice fill up the tray and spill over onto the floor. It came going and going and going. Well, and then he got a little bored with the ice machine. He decided to experiment with the other dispensers. He pushed the one and it came out clear. He pushed another one and it came out brown. He pushed another one, It came out orange. He liked orange. He kept trying to push it and put his hand under it, put a little cup to his face. Push it, put his hand on it. It wasn't working very well. He decided to stick his little face under the dispenser and try to get some that way. This wasn't working very well either, so he decided to climb up on the side of the counter. Put his little did I tell you how big he was? He was 40 or 50 pounds overweight, little 9, 10-year-old kid, putting his body sideways on the counter, trying to put his head under the orange pop dispenser. No one said a word. Until finally some big guy came along, and he wanted to get his pop. And he saw this kid lying sideways on the counter in front of him. And he growled at him. "Hey, get down, not appropriate." The kid's eyes got really big, and he got right down and got out of the way, leaving puddles of pop and ice in his wake. What's wrong with this picture? Why am I starting to worry about this boy? What do I know about this pattern of behavior and how it is likely to play out in this boy's life? I'm not worried today about the mess that the people at Wendy's are going to have to clean up. That's unfortunate. I'm not worried about the fact that he bounced into me. That's not a big deal. I am worried about what this kid's life becomes if this pattern is not incredibly quickly changed. I flew down to Mississippi. I was working with an incredibly poor, poverty-stricken area in central Mississippi, the kind of poverty that you just hardly see in North America. It is staggering to see. This wonderful county of schools has gone from a very low level of proficiency over the last 4 or 5 years now in our pilot school to where we have almost 90% of their kids fully proficient in reading and math by the end of 3rd grade. It is a thing of beauty. They have transformed outcomes. There's still more to do, but they have transformed outcomes in that community. Well, I was going to be down there for a few days, and the first night I noticed that I had forgotten something in my packing, in my haste. I'd forgotten my swimsuit. So where do you go in central rural Mississippi at 10 o'clock at night if you need to try to find a swimsuit? What is the one place where almost everything under the sun is sold for the cheapest possible rate? How many of you have occasionally gone to Walmart at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night just for the purpose of watching people? Indeed, isn't it fun? Well, I was walking around trying to find a swimsuit. I couldn't find one. I asked for help. They gave me help. They couldn't find one either. I struck out. There were no swimsuits at Walmart. So by 10:30, I was on my way out. I found a couple of things to buy. I got in line. I was in line behind a young mother. She looked to be 24, 25 years of age. She had a little 2-year-old boy in the cart in front of me. They were on their way out. 10:30 at night, did I tell you? Little 2-year-old boy still out at Walmart with his mom. Walmart has designed the checkout aisles in this extraordinarily thoughtful way. All the way along one side of the checkout aisle are displays of candy and other kinds of interesting and amusing things that are perfectly designed for a 2-year-old kid to want to reach out and say, I want. And that's what this little boy was doing at 10:30 at night. And his mom was snapping at him in an angry tone. "No, I'm tired. We can't afford that. We're not buying any candy. I want. No, we can't afford that. We're not buying it." She snapped at him. He reached out and grabbed it and held it to his little body. She tried to pull it away, and he said, "No, no, no." And he whacked her over the head with his bag of Werther's caramel toffees. At which point she got angry. She pulled back and she said, "Don't you hit me, don't you hit me," in the angriest, slightly out of control, slightly sad tone of voice. And then she came in close. "Now, please be good. Please be good. Please be good." And he took that bag of Werther's candy and whacked her over the head again. "Don't you do that. Don't you do that. Don't you do that," she said in an angry tone. And then she came close. "Now, please be good." And he whacked her again. Honest to God, I saw this happen 12 times in a row. Until finally, y'all know what happened. She said, "Okay." And he held on to the candy, and they bought it that night. How many of you think I wanted to do an intervention right there in the Walmart? How many of you think doing an intervention with a really tired mom and a really cranky 2-year-old at 10:30 at night in the Walmart is a really good plan. So I held my tongue. I did my work in Mississippi. I was headed home. It was a Friday night. How many of you have been on a Friday night late flight coming home? How many of you know that feeling of tired travelers, many of whom have been out there for several days this week, working hard. Finally, they're getting to come home. There's a sort of a quiet atmosphere on that airplane. And I settled in. I got a little lucky that night. Sometimes I fly enough so that sometimes they move me up into those slightly bigger, more comfortable seats, and oh, those are nicer for my big body. They feel so much better. And this was one of those nights. I had one of those more comfy seats. I was feeling good. I settled in, put my stuff away. I was getting ready to read my book or take a little nap. There was a very lovely woman seated next to me. She is the president of a company, she explained to me. And she and I did what we typically call airplane conversation. She tells me what she does for a living. I tell her what I do for a living. She tells me a little bit about her family. I'll tell her just a little bit about my family. And then the assumption is, leave me alone. Don't talk to me. I want to read my book. I want to take a nap. Just let me have a nice little quiet space here, please. But it was not to be that night, because I had told her what I do for a living. And after the plane took off and the lights were dim and I was sitting back comfortably, I turned on my light, brought out my book. I was going to do a little reading, and I turned that way, and as I did, she turned to me, and there were tears coming down her cheeks. And she said, "Bob, you work with kids and families." "Yeah." "Can I talk to you about my 20-year-old boy?" And there was a part of my brain that was going, "Oh crap. Guess I don't get to read my book for a little while here tonight." And she told me about her beautiful 20-year-old boy, her son that she loves so much. Back when he was in elementary school, he didn't seem very motivated. He just didn't seem to want to work very hard. He was privileged. He had every kind of thing, every kind of video entertainment, every kind of electronic toy, every type of travel opportunity. He went to wonderful camps. He had a wonderful life, but he just didn't seem very motivated. And very often, just to get him to do his homework, she would have to sit with him and help him and sometimes write his papers for him and fill out his worksheets for him. And he just wasn't very motivated. So she, because she loves him so much, helped him every which way she could. By the time he got to middle school, he seemed even a little bit less motivated. Sometimes he wouldn't even bring his homework home, but she had the phone numbers for all of those middle school teachers, and she would call them up and get the homework, and then they would sit down and she would try to help him do his homework. By the time he got to high school, well, there were a couple little legal issues that had to do with drugs, but they hired good lawyers and they got him out of trouble. And he didn't want to do his work, and he did his very best to avoid it. But somehow, after 4 years, he graduated with an incredibly low 2.1 grade point average. Did you know that even with a 2.1 grade point average, there are colleges and universities who, because they are private schools and glad to take your tuition dollars, will accept a student of this caliber? And sure enough, never having had a summer job to help pay for this college education, having a beautiful lease car that mommy and daddy are paying for, having a wonderful cell phone that mommy and daddy are paying for, having wonderful clothes and every kind of wonderful electronic toy, this kid goes off to university. Because his mom loves him so much, she told me, she would put his college schedule in her planner. And every day, 45 minutes before each and every one of his classes, because she loves him, she would call him up to remind him to go to class and to get his homework and to wake up from whatever he might be doing and go to class. And every day they talked, and every day she would say, "Hey, would you like us to come up and visit on the weekend?" And he would say, "No, thank you. I'm just too busy with all my studies." But the reality was that he had enrolled in something called the alternative curriculum. Does anybody here have personal experience with the alternative curriculum that is available in most colleges and universities? I don't mean the one where you go to class and earn credits. I mean the one that most people think of as sex, drugs, and video games. And that was the alternative curriculum in which he had enrolled and was now spending almost all of his time. In fact, he stopped going to class. And by December, he had been disinvited from that university. He was no longer welcome because he had stopped going to class and he had failed every single class and he could no longer come back to that school. Well, they felt sort of bad for him and they didn't want him to have too much stress. So they just sort of said, okay, just relax, get your stuff together. We'll figure this out together. And because they loved him so much, he still has his cell phone and he still has his lease car. And he still has all of his wonderful games. And every once in a while, he doesn't come home at night. He stays out, and he won't tell them where. But they don't want to put too much stress or too many rules or, they don't want to fight with him because they love him. Well, after a few months of that lifestyle, Mommy and Daddy got him enrolled in a community college class because living at home, they thought maybe they could help him get a good start. Sure enough, he took the class, and with a whole lot of help from his parents, he was able to pass that community college class. Hey, success! They found another college that would take him. He enrolled the following fall. What do you suppose happened? They had an alternative curriculum at that school that was also available. He signed right up. By December, he had been disinvited once again. And now on the airplane, he's been home for a few months. And this beautiful, smart woman, smart enough to own and run a company, looks at me with sincerity and says, Bob, what should I do? Turn to an interesting, intelligent adult. This is the time. This is the first time this afternoon I'm going to ask you to do this. Turn to an interesting, intelligent-looking adult. One of you be me. One of you be the parents seated next to me on the Delta airliner and have that conversation. Ready, set, go. You have 3 minutes. All righty. Let me bring your attention back, please. I've lost count of the number of airplane conversations I've had that are kind of similar to this one. It is astonishing to me. And I've never tried to keep count of all of the incredible stories that people share with me in workshops like this, in all kinds of places. Sometimes it just takes my breath away. Sometimes my heart aches for the sadness that people share with me. But how many of you know people in your own life who are well-intentioned, loving, smart, good people, but who unfortunately don't know what to do to help their kids grow on the inside strong, on the inside resilient, on the inside respectful? The kind of kids who are not likely to be the victims of bullying, because they have that inner strength. The kind of kids, because they have some values, who are not likely to be someone who does disrespectfully bully others. How many of you know people that are raising kids that are headed in a direction that worries you, even though these are sweet, loving, smart, well-intentioned men and women trying to raise their families? We look around in the world today, and I think there's a lot of that, which is why I'm kind of excited that you all have activities and get-togethers like this, where we can start to be smart about this, develop more schools, the likes of which I was hearing this morning, more families like some of the stories that I'm guessing I could find in this room represent, where we're doing some of those things, where we have networks of support, where we have a powerful knowledge base, and we have an action plan that is designed to give us the kinds of results that we want for our kids. Smart, strong, funny, happy, resilient kids who can handle the good stuff and the not so good stuff that comes along in their lives. I'm going to try to do two basic things today. One is to describe to you the sequence of development for raising really resilient kids. to understand that in a way that you can make some decisions about things that you would like to do more of or less of in your own life, and also so that you can understand it to the degree that you can share this and teach this with others, because you'll find that there are a lot of folks that don't know this particular piece. And then I will try to be very specific with you in relationship to bullying. Here are some steps that you, not so much at school, that won't be my focus today. You had a great presentation on that already. But in your home environments, what are some of the things that we as parents can do that will take away the likelihood that our kids will be bullied or ever become involved in bullying behaviors as well? So let's get started on those two things. I think of the development of resilience. I think of the development of strong young men and women as one of the most beautiful and glorious and almost miraculous processes that I could ever understand. But all the pieces have to be there. And it starts with this thing we call attachment. The first 12 to 18 months of life where kids develop that sense of safety and security. I'm going to go into each one of these in detail. Here's just the brief overview. With that first 12 to 18 months, solid and appropriate and giving kids that sense of them being loved and safe in the world, then kids engage actively in the phase that we call self-regulatory development. Self-regulation is something we continue to develop all throughout our lives, but the foundation of self-regulation is typically considered emotional self-regulation, and it includes things like self-calming, being able to focus on the right thing and not be distracted by other things, persistence, stick-to-itiveness, and the capacity for delaying gratification and accepting the fact that you don't always have to get what you want right now. Those are the emotional foundation for self-regulation, upon which self-regulation then develops for the rest of our life. There's some good news and some bad news here. The good news is, with right experiences, we can help practically every kid develop good, strong, internal self-regulation. Bad news is the optimal time for the wiring of the brain, for the stimulation and wiring experiences, is birth to age 4. Best time in the development of the brain to create that foundation of emotional self-regulation is when they're small. Good news here is that you can continue to develop self-regulation even if we didn't do everything that might have been optimal in that early phase. It just takes a little more effort, a little more work, a little more consistency on our part. There's still plenty of time. Up through adolescence, prime time. After adolescence, still possible, but once again now a little more difficult to develop self-regulation if all of that foundation work was not done at the right time. If you become reasonably well self-regulated, you can adjust your mood. You can get excited at the right time. You can get quiet at the right time. You can focus. You can get goofy at the right time, at the right place, in the right way. If you become reasonably well self-regulated, you become one of those kids who goes out in the world and starts doing stuff and having fun and finding that sometimes I'm successful and sometimes I'm not. And kids like that, who have that inner strength, are starting to develop this thing that we call resilience. I'm going to go into this in much greater detail later. If you are self-regulated, you are also calm enough on the inside, most of the time, so that I can look outside of myself. Has anyone here ever had a day when you were so distracted, so worried, so anxious about something in your own life that you just couldn't get outside of yourself and even notice what a good friend of yours was feeling? A stranger on the street, somebody at school, a teacher, a kid. I was just so full of my own stuff. I couldn't even notice that this guy was having a horrible day and give him that little tiny bit of help that I might have been able to give. That's what unregulated kids are like all the time on the inside. They don't get to that calm, strong place to a sufficient degree that they can look outside and see what's happening in the lives of other people. That's this thing that we call empathy, the capacity to notice what's going on inside the lives of other people. What's she thinking? What's she's feeling? What's going on inside of her right now? That is empathy. And empathy is the cornerstone, the foundation for all emotional intelligence and all social skills. And some people would say emotional intelligence is a far more important determining factor in the quality of your life than is intellectual intelligence. If you're so fortunate as to have developed empathy, and you are a self-regulated and resilient kid, you're going to be one of those kids that starts to show up as having character. I saw 3 of those kids this morning. I love watching kids with self-efficacy and character. A kid who will stand up for what's right. Whether someone is mistreating me or someone else, I will stand up and try, if it's safe, to do something about that. We'll get into some of that a little bit more specifically later. And if you're really lucky and you raise a kid for whom all of these things are together, that kid has character, begins to serve other people, begins to serve the world, and is one of those human beings, like some of you right here in this room, who has dedicated your life in some way to service for others. Let's look carefully at each of these phases. The attachment phase is the first 12 to 18 months of life. This is the phase in which, first and foremost, this kid falls into a relationship with one primary caregiver. Usually we will call her mom. This primary caregiver is the person who gives this child a sense of trust, a sense of stability, the ability to predict, when I'm hungry, somebody shows up. When I'm cold, somebody comes over. When I'm just feeling fussy and angry, somebody holds me and squeezes me and takes care of me. When I need something, when I'm unhappy, when I need something, mom comes. I can count on mom. She is there for me. And then this kid starts to discover reciprocity. When I smile, mom smiles back. When I laugh, her face gets all goofy and she makes these wonderful sounds and she squeezes me back. Somehow, what's good for her is good for me. Somehow, what's good for me is good for her. We are connected in a way that is not completely comprehensible to us, but which we feel deep in our bones, deep in our emotional sense, deep in our spirit. Deep, 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 somewhere I know that I am connected to my primary caregiver. She wants what's good for me. I want what's good for her. This is the beginning of what's called social conscience. When you don't just want what's good for yourself, you also want what is good for others. It starts with this one primary bond. If this bond is in place, it then generalizes to what's called secondary attachments. And that's going to be dad and brother and sister and grandma and grandpa and other caregivers who might come along. What's good for you is good for me. What's good for me is good for you. We care about each other. We take care of each other. We are part of a team. I can trust and count on you, and you can trust and count on me. The degree to which this occurs in that first 12 to 18 months is extraordinarily important in the life of a child. It will determine things about your personality, your basic sense of security, your basic sense of trust of others for the rest of your life. The bond is established in the first 12 to 18 months, but it can be disrupted or damaged by physical illness, by prolonged pain, by things like a sense of abandonment, by any kind of physical or emotional or sexual abuse. Any of those things in the first 3 to 4 years can significantly damage this primary bond. It is an extraordinarily important part of life. During that phase, these 2 questions are answered in a way that will stick with you forever. The first one is, can I trust people? Can I trust the world? Are my relationships safe? Is this world a basically safe and good place? That's the first question. The second question is, am I worthy of being loved? The power of those two questions to influence how you will be as a human being are extraordinary, which is why this early attachment phase is so darned powerful. If you are so fortunate to fall into a pattern of complete attachment, trust, safety, security in that early phase, then things like self-regulation will more easily follow. There are a few sad souls for whom there was no basic attachment. They had some really bad experiences. They were hurt, or they were abandoned, or they had a chronic illness or something, a separation, and they never built that primary bond. Those people, in some cases, grow up to have what's called reactive attachment disorder, where I don't feel a connection to other people. Those people are basically considered conscienceless. I don't care about other people. Sometimes they get called sociopaths because their behavior is hurtful to others and they don't care. Fortunately, there are very few people by percentage out there in the world like that. Not as fortunately, there is a whole nother category that's called partial or incomplete attachment. And we're seeing a whole lot more kids that fall into that. They don't have a reactive attachment disorder. They're not sociopaths. But they also don't have that complete sense of safety and security, that sense of personal value, that sense of being worthy of love. They are somewhere in the middle. They didn't get enough of the FaceTime, the touch, the snuggling, the soft voice, the happiness, the giggles, the laughter, the good food. All those experiences that give you that sense of warmth and connection. They may have spent way too much time in childcare or experienced low-quality child care, but they didn't get enough of the attachment experiences so that I fall into this completely solidly attached group of kids where I would like every one of your kids to, in theory, be. Those kids who have less well-developed senses of attachment will be a little more insecure, a little more distrusting. It will color some aspects of relationships for them because that sense of trust is harder to come by for those kids. That sense of safety is harder to come by. That sense of being able to stop worrying about myself and notice and care about other people is slightly impaired by comparison to the more attached group of kids. If we are in that attached group, and now we are also starting to develop this thing that we call self-regulation. Self-regulation, optimal time for the development of these aspects of emotional self-regulation, birth through age 4. How do we help kids learn self-calming? I didn't say calming by saying, here, sweetie, here's some ice cream, quit crying. I said self-calming. How do we, this is where I'm asking an out loud question, hoping that some person is going to raise their hand so I know where their voice is coming from and they will give me an out loud answer. What are some of the things that we do to help kids learn to calm themselves? Yes, ma'am. Breathing. Teach them how to breathe to calm themselves down. So there are actually some techniques, and some of that comes from just something like good exercise. You go out and run, you're going to breathe harder, you in fact learn to calm yourself a little better. Sir?
That's a counting pattern, like tell them to count down from 5.
Say it again?
A counting pattern.
A counting pattern, a counting down pattern. That's another idea.
Modeling.
Modeling being calm. Oh, being that calm, strong adult that this kid gets to watch and model. There's a pretty powerful one. What else?
Be closer to nature.
Oh, nature.
Yeah.
That does it for me. That brings me into that calm place. I was out in Las Vegas the other day, not my favorite place in the world to be. Yeah, there's a whole side of that. But I discovered the Valley of Fire. Do you know about the Valley of Fire?
I do not know.
It's about 1 hour northeast of Las Vegas, out in the middle of this stinking ugly desert. Not very pretty country, but then suddenly you come to this little valley where there have been geologic activities over the centuries, and there are beautiful red rocks jutting up out of the sand, and all of these different colors of rocks and formations, and there's a red flow, and there's a light brown flow, and it all comes together. And it's one of those beautiful still places where you can feel the stillness. I had a workshop later in the day. I went out there in the morning. I almost didn't make it. You know why? I started wandering. I got lost. It was a wonderful lost. I loved every minute of it. I knew I was going to find my way out sooner or later. It was absolutely wonderful. I will never forget that sense of peace that I found in the Valley of Fire. So thank you for mentioning that. What else do we do to help kids learn to be calm?
Just making them aware when they are having that.
Helping them using words to help them be aware, or in some way learning self-awareness so that then they can begin to calm themselves. What else? Yes.
Well, I guess it can be considered a little bit controversial, but when I'm thinking 0 to 4, I'm still thinking not running every time you hear them upset, and certainly teaching them that when they're alone, they actually can calm themselves.
So not always running at every little squeak that your child might make. How many children do you have? 4 children. Me too. So you've had a little practice with this, right? Do you know the difference? As a mom, can you easily recognize the difference between a child who is truly in distress and a child who is just crabbing or wants something? Is there an absolute difference to your ears? And so when they make a sound that is truly distress or fear or fright, what should you do? Run and get them. And when they make all the rest of the sounds, what should you do? Let them be. Because they will not learn to calm themselves if you're constantly there trying to calm them. Part of it is them learning to handle stuff on their own. Wonderful point. What else do we do to help kids learn to be calm? I'm going to say simple stuff. Bedtime. You have a routine. You go through your routine. We have bath, we get on PJs, we snuggle together, we read together, then I kiss you on the cheek and I say good night, I love you, do not want to see you or hear you till morning. And the kid might say, no, I want this, and I want another story, and I want attention, I want another hug. Yeah, I know you do, but I'm gone. Time for me to give attention to dad or mom or somebody else in the house right now. See you in the morning. Can kids learn to handle that? Absolutely. Every time you have a good family routine, a mealtime routine, a morning time routine, a bedtime routine, a chores routine, every time you have a really well-established routine, you are giving kids opportunities to practice self-calming. They don't always want to follow your routines. But once they are established in your home, they are the routine, and kids learn to manage their emotions and go through the steps of the routine. One of the most wonderful ways to learn self-calming. What else do we do to help kids learn to calm themselves? Pardon me? When they want your attention, when they want a crab, when they want some ice cream, when they're trying to argue with you, don't engage with them and let them be, knowing that you have pretty clearly told them, maybe in a nonverbal way, that they don't get that attention or whatever it is that they want right now. So every time they have to delay gratification, you're saying, every time. And that is a wonderful segue for me. Thank you very much. Did you do that on purpose? Did you look up there and see where I was headed next with this? Because one of the ways we help kids learn to self-regulate is to practice delayed gratification, which is plain old not always getting what you want right now. How many of you know kids that sometimes want it now? My oldest, my Rebecca, I started to tell you about her. She was one of those kids who would stomp like a horse. How many of you have a foot stomper? Oh, don't you? Oh, those are strong kids, those foot stompers. I want it, and I want it now. And somehow they've learned body language. You didn't teach this to them, I hope. But by golly, they want it. Maybe she did. How do we help kids learn to delay gratification? I want a snack. I know you want a snack, darling. Dinner's going to be ready in 20 minutes. I can't wait that long. I'll die. That'd be really sad, but dinner's going to be ready in 20 minutes. don't have to go for those little hooks, do we? We don't have to bite on those, do we? My goodness. What's another example of how we teach kids to delay gratification?
I don't know if anybody mentioned that, but finding that spot where leaving the situation and finding that spot where they feel calm most of the time. So either if it's the room or the couch, so leaving wherever they're having that problem.
So you are correctly pointing out that if I have a good place for kids to sit quietly, some people call it the thinking spot. Some people call it the timeout spot. I hope nobody calls it the bad girl spot or the bad boy spot. I don't like those terms. I prefer something like the thinking spot, and that becomes a place where every once in a while, if I've been misbehaving, Mom might say, uh-oh, Bobby, bad decision, you need a little thinking time, and you take me over there to the thinking spot, and we've done this 100 times, so we all know the routine, and I have to sit here for just a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes usually, and then Mom comes back and she says, come on back and be with the family. And when I sit there, I don't like it. But I accept that Mom is the boss around here, and I delay gratification. I don't have to get what I want right now. Yes, ma'am.
It could be seen in a different way where it's not like the timeout spot where it's somewhere they don't want to go to, it's somewhere where they do want to go to, because it's very hard for them not somewhere where they don't want to.
Yes.
So somewhere where they do want to go to, for example, like having, if they're going something that they can look at or remind them of a happy moment, so something that is positive, having that spot where if I want to go to calm myself down, I have the couch and then I grab my phone and it calms me down. So
Yes.
having that spot in the house is positive.
So you're saying teaching them ways that work for them. For you, it's going to the couch with your cell phone. For another kid, it might be going out in the backyard where there's a little bit of nature. For another kid, it might be taking a shower. Oh, my son used to do that for hours at a time. Do you know kids like that? Their calm and happy spot is underneath that shower. It uses a lot of hot water, don't you think? But helping them find those ways that work for them. Perfect. What else is an example of delayed gratification?
Distract, like I'm teaching my son to distract himself. I know you want this now, you can't have it. What can you do to distract him?
Oh, smart moms like this scare me. Teaching your kids how to not obsess on what they want, but instead to distract themselves or fill their minds with other things. That is the source of inquiry that a fellow that I'm going to be quoting later today by the name of Dr. Walter Mischel explored back in the 60s and 70s. Some people call it the marshmallow experiment. We'll talk about that a little bit. But he was exploring that exact point. What do kids who are good at waiting do to distract themselves and keep themselves from perseverating or getting upset or anxious about this situation? What an interesting thing to purposefully teach your kids how to do that. You're way ahead. Oh, that's such a good one. What else do people do to help kids learn to delay gratification?
When we were young, real young, I never bought me stuff when we were shopping.
Yeah.
They just, and they never, I guess after they tried once or twice, they never bothered to ask after that. They just knew that.
Wait a second. This woman is describing one of the most old-fashioned, hard-nosed approaches to parenting. How many of us can help kids learn to delay gratification by calmly saying no? This stuff doesn't have to be complicated, does it? I want. No. Are some kids trained to be demanding little monsters in the grocery store? Are there some kids you wouldn't want to be caught dead with in the Walmart? Because they would be throwing tantrums trying to get what they want. Is it possible that kids could actually learn that when mom says no with this soft, strong voice, that she means no, and that there's no sense in badgering her, because that one no is all you're going to get? Oh, I love a strong thought like that. One more example of a way that we teach our kids to delay gratification. Yes.
Well, just to tag on to what Kim said, but not only was it saying no, it was setting up an environment where no didn't even have to be stated, because unlike the other woman that you talked about, who eventually, after being hit in the head with a bag of Orbis 50 times, said yes.
Yeah.
So if you have never said yes, then you are not setting up an environment where your child knows to ask you 20 times, or knows to take their voice from 0 to 10, because they know at 10 is when you're going to respond. So when I've spoken to, whether it be family members or mothers of my students or whatever, I'll say, if you're eventually going to say yes the first time.
Yeah.
Just know yourself enough to say, I'm just gonna say yes, right off the bat. But if you say no that first time, be prepared to say it no the 10th, the 20th, the 30th, the 100th time. Set up an environment.
So you're saying that consistency as moms and dads will make our lives easier. Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah.
I said 7 sentences in one word.
Yes. Is it also possible that when we're teaching our kids to delay gratification, that we are also delaying gratification? Is it possible I want that kid to love me and hug me and kiss me and give me all kinds of positive attention? Is it also possible that by saying no, I won't get that for a little while? Do we all know, however, that in the long run, the consistent parents, the parents who set secure limits consistently and from a calm, strong, loving place, that those are the ones with whom kids will have great relationships over time. And so every time we are consistent in the way you described, we are delaying our own gratification in a way that is incredibly important for us to be effective parents. And we are modeling delayed gratification, as you suggested earlier, for this kid that we're trying to teach. Let's look at another one. Perseverance. We want kids that can have some stick-to-itiveness. They don't quit when things get a little bit hard or a little bit boring. How do we help kids develop this thing we call perseverance? By not doing things for them, especially if you absolutely know they are capable of handling on their own. What else? Modeling perseverance, incredibly important. Seeing moms and dads that stick to it, give kids models or pictures of what that might be like in their own life. What else? Yes?
Providing challenges.
Providing things that are challenging. If everything is easy all the time, you're not going to be practicing perseverance because you don't have to try very hard. If everything is provided, if everything is given to you, kind of like in the story that I started with today, the kid on the airplane, his mom, she provided an example of taking some of those challenges away from this kid because everything was done for him and provided for him. So those little bits of challenge, do good coaches know this? Does good involvement in sports and extracurricular activities, choir, song, gymnastics, karate, do these provide experiences that might give these kids a little bit of challenge to help them learn to strengthen that perseverance muscle? All of these things are what builds perseverance. And how about this one? The ability to focus on the right thing at the right time and not always be distracted by any other thing that might come along. How do we help kids practice and learn this capacity for focusing on the right thing at the right time? Sir? It's a tough one. There's some people in this room who have ideas, and I'm going to find them. Yes, ma'am.
Teaching them to volunteer.
Pardon me?
Teaching them to volunteer. Taking them with you when you volunteer.
Oh, taking kids with you when you're doing volunteering, teaching them to volunteer. They're going to be giving effort to something. Effort and focus kind of go along together. Good. What else?
I guess reminding them to stay on the past. Like I always say, focus on the past.
A little bit of coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of coaching. Just that little bit of nurturing. What else? Some of you who are still in the kid range in your life, you can contribute to these discussions as well. How do we help kids learn to increase their capacity to focus on the right thing at the right time? Yes? Find things in which they are interested. Absolutely. You find the stuff that kids really love, and gosh, you'll find that they're going to give extra effort to those things. That's where you're absolutely exercising that capacity for focus. Very good. What else?
I think it's more important at this information age to control your attention on things that you are not most interested in. Because Wi-Fi is available 24/7 at home or at school. So I think it's more important than ever to train kids actually to be able to focus on the probably a little bit more boring schoolwork than the video games. I think that's...
Is it fair to say, as your remarks suggest, that in this world there seem to be more and more available distractions? Is there a world of entrepreneurs out there inventing things even yet today that have not yet been invented that are designed to get the attention and the money of you and your children? And so, yes, there are an incredible degree of... 100 years ago, working on the farm, working hard outside, there were fewer of these surrounding all of us all the time kinds of distractions. Today, I've got 1,000 different things I can look at on my phone, right in my pocket, available at any time, and then the rest of the world has all that other stuff. So this importance of the capacity for focus, combined with things like perseverance and delayed gratification, become incredibly important, don't they?
I totally agree. I actually honestly think the kids nowadays have a much tougher time than we did when we were kids. And I told my husband, you're not going to be able to get your PhD if you were born today. You know, it's just not possible for him.
You are correctly describing that there are some greater challenges, which is why we do this work and why we as parents need to be more conscious of these things. If I lived 100 years ago and I was out working in the fields with my mom or my dad, I would be staying on task. Everybody would know what the focus would be. I have a model of focus. We have a task. We have to get it done before lunchtime, or we have to get it done before dinner. There are all kinds of internal supports for focusing on the right time, on the right thing at the right time in the right way. It is more difficult today in a bunch of different ways to help kids learn this capacity. Those children who do learn the capacity for all of these aspects of self-regulation, including focusing, will have an incredible advantage in this world that I'm going to describe to you in a little while. Yes, ma'am?
Ensuring that the task is developmentally appropriate. Children have an easier time maintaining focus on a task that is appropriate to their age and attention span than providing with a task that is either too easy or too challenging.
Yes.
So, and increasing the demands incrementally so that they know how to sustain their focus and attention.
Oh, now there's a good teacher talking back there. She's using a little bit of that teacher talk, because she is saying absolutely right on that by giving kids things that are a little bit challenging, not only do we develop their ability to persevere, but their ability to stay focused on the right thing at the right time, at the right way. By giving kids tasks, challenges in what's typically called their instructional zone, instructional match, a little bit of challenge but not too much. It stretches your ability to persist and stay focused at the same time on these activities, and that helps you become stronger in this area of self-regulation. What a wonderful example. And so, imagine these kids who have learned to get excited at the right time, but they can get quiet when they need to. They can run around and be wild dogs when you're at the park or out at nature. But they can also stand quietly behind you in church or at school or in the grocery store when that is the appropriate response to meet that need. They can get quiet and focus when they're reading. They can get excited and tell jokes at the dinner table. They know how to adjust themselves to get to the right emotional place to meet the circumstances in their lives. Is this something you want for your children? When's the right time? Birth to 4. 4 to 12. That's prime time. After 12, yes, still possible. Just a lot more effort as kids move beyond that range. You had another thought you wanted to share.
Well, I made a colossal mistake as a teacher last week. I wanted the children to downregulate because it was time to focus on something. but I played music that was too upbeat, and we were dancing. So then when the task was too challenging for them because they upregulated so much that I was like, okay, now sit down. They were like, what? And they couldn't downregulate.
Yes.
So 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, like, you have to recognize that their ability to upregulate and downregulate is not as quick as yours as an adult.
So are you saying that to help kids learn to self-regulate, the teacher or the mom had better pick the right music for the right time?
And recognize how challenging upregulating and downregulating is for young people, right? They're not cognizant of how to do it on their own, but that it needs to be taught.
You put them outside of the range of possible to be calm in that moment with all that dancing music going on in the background. Yep. And then we live and we learn, don't we? If you are so lucky to have kids who do become strong in terms of their self-regulation skills, compared to those kids that you know in your neighborhood, in your community, sometimes in your schools, who are struggling with this issue of self-regulation, just need to know this: kids with low self-regulation skills are more likely to fall into patterns, likely to smoke, have health problems, or lousy credit. 3 times more likely to get caught in terms of criminal behavior. 3 times more likely to have multiple addictions. 2 times as likely to be single parents. And this comes from a fairly stable society measured on a big population of kids in New Zealand. Pretty telling numbers. You made me think of the marshmallow experiment a little while ago. This wonderful guy, Walter Mischel, came up with this plan back in the 60s, starting out at Stanford, where the researcher would bring 4-year-olds into the little testing room. He would explain to them, first of all, they would play some games and get to know each other so that they had a relationship. And there was a sense of trust and a sense of safety in the room. They didn't just do it cold. We're going to get to know you a little bit, play some games, get to like each other. And then I'm going to explain to you that I'm going to leave the room. You can ring this bell that I'm going to put on the desk right here, and I'll come back immediately and you can have 1 marshmallow. Or if you can wait until I come back on my own in about 15 minutes, you can have 2 marshmallows. What a silly little experiment. I mean, really, is this goofy or what? Waiting for more marshmallows, does this really matter in life? One would probably say no. But what it represents, the capacity for that little extra bit of waiting, apparently does make a difference, because the kids who could wait for the 2 marshmallows after about 15 minutes are more likely to try hard and achieve at higher levels in school, more likely to have good peer relationships, play nicely with other kids, more likely to be respectful of adult authority figures like teachers, more likely to stay out of trouble in middle school and high school, more likely to graduate from high school, more likely to go on for advanced education after high school, more likely to be successful on the job, more likely to have stable adult relationships like marriages. Kids who could wait for 15 minutes. Kids who could wait for 15 minutes were also, and this is astonishing to me, because this is not a measure of intelligence that was looked at in this test. The kids who could wait for 15 minutes for the 2 marshmallows had, on average, a 210-point higher SAT score. Somebody explain to me why. Yes, ma'am.
Because they have self-control, focus.
More self-control, more focus, more persistence, more delayed gratification, more likely to listen to their teachers, more likely to remember to take their homework home, more likely to get it done, more likely to turn it in, more likely to try, more likely to be strong and calm on the inside. That's not an IQ test. That's a self-regulation test. Kids who are self-regulated are more likely to be successful in astonishing ways in life. Can you all see the connection already between this and bullying? Are you beginning to see where this is going to go? I'm guessing some of you are putting all those pieces together already. And you in your life, how about you? How well self-regulated are we as adults? Do you have to practice self-regulation in your own life? I'm trying to think of all the different ways you, as adults or as teenagers, are practicing self-regulation. Some of you had to be self-regulated last night. You said, I'm going to get up in the morning, I'm going to go to that parenting thing, I better go to bed at a reasonable time. That took some self-regulation for some of you. Then some of you had to set your alarm and get up in the morning and so maybe I should just sleep in. But because you're the kind of parents that you are, you said, no, not going to do that. I can self-regulate. I can get calm. I can get focused. I can persist on getting up, getting dressed, getting ready, getting there in time. All of that. Did some of you take the time to have a nice, nutritious breakfast this morning? That takes self-regulation. You didn't just grab a Mountain Dew on your way out the door. You actually sat down maybe with your kids and had something with a little nourishment, maybe a little protein, getting off to a better day. During the day, there will be other moments of self-regulation. Will you take the time later this afternoon to do some chores with your kids and be in that calm state of mind? Will you be in that self-regulated state? Will you plan ahead and have a nice meal? And at the meal, at the dinner table, will we laugh and will we take turns and will we smile and will we share? And there are examples of self-regulation in all of that. After dinner, will I give in to my child's demands and let him play Grand Theft Auto or World of War or some kind of killer game? Or will I be self-regulated and say, oh no, sweetie, I know Grandma gave you that game, but we don't play it in our house. That's going to take a lot of self-regulation for some of you. And when Dad says something silly and goofy to you tonight, later, will you be self-regulated enough to say, oh, he's had a rough week. I'm going to give him a few minutes. And then I'm going to talk to him about what it is that he just said, rather than jumping down his throat right now. Do we practice self-regulation in hundreds of ways every single day as successful adults? And the answer is, yeah, whether you like it or not, you do. Hopefully you have the capacity for this because it influences the quality of your life every single day. And there are children out there in the world today who are not getting the self-regulatory experiences in their life at the right time to help them be calm and strong on the inside, the way we're talking about here today. If you're really lucky and you have these self-regulation experiences, then you're one of these kids that's learning to be strong on the inside. You're going to try things. You're going to experiment. You're going to go out in the world. You're going to do things and see whether or not they work. Sometimes they'll work. Sometimes they won't work. Has anybody here ever had a harebrained idea? You went out and tried it, and it didn't work at all. Me too. Does anybody here remember back to when they were 12 years of age, and your brain was full of harebrained ideas? Yeah, me too. Some of them were really bad ideas, but somehow we survived, didn't we? But we've learned from those experiences. And what do those experiences give us? Something called resilience. The capacity to keep trying, keep smiling, be optimistic, look forward to new things, new challenges, new adventures. How many of you wake up in the morning thinking some days, wow, I'm going to find a great adventure this week? There's going to be something fun and challenging. I'm going to take something on in my life. I am ready. That's that resilience talking from deep inside of you. If you are self-regulated and resilient, you are developing this wonderful thing we call self-efficacy. That powerful belief that I can make a difference. With effort, I can make my life better. With effort, I can make life better for my loved ones, my family, my community. Look around in this room and see if you recognize some people with self-efficacy. It's one of those moments. Turn to an interesting, intelligent person. Describe to this other person one human being that you know who is a powerful example of self-efficacy. Describe one person who really represents self-efficacy. Ready, set, go. 2 minutes. So somewhere in there is a model of commitment and determination that's based on something, isn't it? You're seeing action, not just talk, but self-efficacy expressed in action. How about you? Who's one person that represents self-efficacy for you?
My best friend. My best friend.
Who is?
She's not here right now. She was supposed to be Mia.
Yeah.
And she, like, no matter what, if I'm down, I'm always, like, nervous to approach my parents. So, or scared, like, when you want to trust someone. So, last time it was, like, I think it was 1 a.m., called her and she just came right to my door. And yeah.
Are there people in your life who believe in you? And who represent that belief in themselves that sometimes helps you see that you can believe in yourself to a new degree? Do you have a support network of people around you like that who see you as having the capacity for great things? Oh boy, does that make a difference in this world. One more. Someone who has in your life represented the capacity for self-efficacy. You.
My sister. Oh, you're my sister. I was thinking specifically about my sister because she, in every area of her life, she has made huge transformations in the past 10 years. Everything from starting to run, so she runs a half marathon, to her passion about teaching in over in the States and bringing all of her kids to above reading levels that we were seeing at even our own children's school. So. Everything she wants to do, she goes and does, very self-regulated.
Teenagers, do you recognize that even we as adults, we're fortunate if we have models of self-efficacy in our lives? People around us who demonstrate this capacity for inner strength, resilience, self-efficacy, give us the hope and belief that more of us then can be like that. It's a model to which we aspire in our own lives. If you're really lucky and you have this basic sense of safety and security, if you're really lucky and you're self-regulated and you're starting to develop this thing that we call resilience, then you will have the capacity to get calm and strong on the inside, enough so that you can not be absorbed by all your own little worries and look out there in the world and say, I wonder what she's feeling today. Or her body language is telling me something and I'm able to notice that and respond. Or her words or her tone of voice or any of those nonverbals are giving me information that I need to pay attention to and notice in such a way that I can respond appropriately. Empathy is simply noticing what's going on inside of other people and then being able to make good social decisions, emotionally intelligent decisions about how I'm going to interact with other people. Is it fair to say that your social skills, your capacity to work with other people are important? Unless you're going to live in a cave and be a coder all of your life, and some people might choose to do that, that's fine, there's a place for that. But for most of us, the need to interact effectively with human beings will be based on our capacity for empathy, emotional intelligence, and social skills. And we will not develop this capacity for empathy unless all those other pieces are in place. Wow. Here's what we want for our kids. It makes the issue of bullying a lot easier to deal with if all of our kids were walking around with all of these skills in place. They're not, but many of yours can be. Based on this sense of attachment and security, I know that I'm loved, I'm worthy of love, and the world and the people that are close to me can be trusted. I have the capacity to be calm and focused. I can stick to it. I can wait and delay gratification. I don't always need to have what I want right now. I'm calm enough on the inside to notice other people and what's going on inside of them. I've developed my ability to notice what's going on with other people. That's my emotional intelligence. I've developed my social skills so that I deal effectively with other human beings and respectfully with other human beings. And with all of that in place, I work well with people, and I do things that aren't just for my own good. I also do things for others. Almost every single person in this room is a representative of this pattern. You might say, oh, I'm a little weak here or there. Yeah, okay. We all are. We're all a little imperfect. We all have those flaws that you were talking about earlier today. But this is a process that every human being goes through. If all of those things are reasonably well in place, not perfectly, but reasonably well in place, then the 5 things I'm going to teach you now become relatively easy. Here are some things that parents can do to help kids be ready for a world in which there are bullies, in which there are models and patterns of adult bullying, music video bullying, video game bullying, patterns of entertainment of all kinds, social networks, the anonymous world of the internet where people can say things and nobody knows who's really seeing them. It's kind of like somebody talked about the bathroom as being a place where bullying used to occur. In a bathroom, there were no adults watching. Well, guess what? On the internet, there are no adults watching. And in many cases, nobody can even trace who you are. It is an incredible opportunity for anonymous bad behavior. Only kids with strong character will choose not to do that or know how to stand up to it. And so it starts with something that several of you have already said today. Parents modeling calm, assertive behavior. Parents that have extraordinarily good routines in their life at home. Beautiful bedtimes, beautiful meal times, beautiful get up in the morning routines. Routines are the stuff of self-regulation. They are also the stuff of safety and security. Kids who live in homes where there are consistent, positive, happy routines are kids who feel safe and connected. This is attachment and this is self-regulation all over the place. Beautiful routines at home. Parents that have learned how to neutralize arguing so that when kids try to argue, you know how to respond calmly instead of with a lot of anger, instead of with a lot of words. You can set the limit with just a few words. And your words are like gold, and your voice is calm, and you don't get sucked into arguing with children. Parents who have learned to have a consistent thinking time routine. Just to have the practice of knowing that every once in a while, sweetheart, you make a bad decision, and when you do, you may have to go sit in a chair for 2 or 3 minutes. If I can get a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old child to understand that when I need to, I can tell you to go sit down quietly for a few minutes, I will like this child a lot better when she's a teenager. She will be calmer and sweeter and more respectful in a whole lot of ways. I will never get a kid to pay attention to curfews and limits on where to go or with whom in the teenage years if I can't get them to sit quietly for 2 or 3 minutes when they're 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. God help me if I cannot establish this limit in my home. Mom and dad get to make the basic choices about food in our home. They decide what we're going to have for dinner. Kids can have choices if mom offers them, but it's basically something that mom and dad get to set the limits on in relationship to when we have snacks, where we have snacks, what we're going to have for dinner, and all of the other basic food distribution choices. You set the rules. Not in an overly controlling way, in a respectful way, but mom and dad get to set those basic rules. And last but not least, in homes where kids do chores for the family, because the research is so crazy cool on this point, kids who do chores for the family are more likely to achieve at higher levels in school. Did you know that? More likely to play nicely with other kids. More likely to stay out of trouble with the law in middle school and high school and beyond. More likely to graduate from high school. More likely to go on to advanced learning. More likely to be nice adult human beings, chores for the family. And yet I know thousands of families across the area of Windsor, affluent or poor, doesn't matter, are letting their kids get away with not helping anyone. And that is a sadness. This 5 set of things add up to an incredible predictor of which kids are going to have self-regulation and security and self-efficacy. Here's another one for parents. Be aware. Know your kids' friends. This seems like such a simple idea, maybe an old-fashioned idea. Yeah, Mom, I'm going to go out with a whole bunch of friends. Great, bring them over here. I want to meet them. Oh no, we don't want you to meet them. We're just going to meet at the mall. Just drop me off. I don't think so, darling. Meet your child's. You don't have to grill them. This is not the 3rd degree. This is not, something like that. But we're going to basically get to know these kids and make some decisions about who's good company and who, in a few cases, might not be. Not going to be real controlling about this, but a little common sense is going to be available to me if I need it. We want Mom and Dad to know that we keep technology out of the bedrooms, out of those private places, for a whole bunch of reasons. One is we want to be able to see what they're doing. My son Matthew, very technology savvy, he used to complain to me. He has a small technology company out in San Francisco now. He's pretty technology savvy. He's making a living in that world. And it's an incredibly competitive world out there. Back when he was in middle school, he used to come to me and complain, Dad, I went over to Alex's house and I'm no good at video games. I don't get to play any video games at home, and I go to somebody else's house and I just lose. It's hurting my social status. Oh, Matthew, that's so sad. Dad, can't I buy a Nintendo? Sorry, Matt. Not going to happen in this house. Well, I guess I didn't damage him too much, but I wanted to know where that boy was going, because guess what? He's a little like me. And he might have tried to go places on the internet that I don't really think a 12, 13, 14-year-old should go on the internet. Should that internet availability be controlled to an area where moms or dads or brothers or sisters might walk by? And the basic answer is yes. The other reason to keep it in the family room is so you can keep a good eye on what's coming in. Because it is entirely possible that somebody could be bullying anonymously through some technology-driven system, and you would not be aware that someone is saying horrible things to or about your child. You might not have any awareness of that for a very long time. We want to be able to at least read the body language, see what's going on in there to some degree. This is a hard one to control, because as soon as you get cell phones, all of that availability is everywhere, that it's in your pocket. And so this is a thing for us to kind of grapple with in the modern world. But the basic screen use, as much as possible, should be confined to public places, and maybe even not at all in the bedroom. Certainly not on televisions and computers and iPads and all of the rest of that. Then there are things like, and there's not just one, things like Snapchat. The amazing ability to send a message or a picture that you get to look at once for 3 or 4 seconds, and then it will disappear and nobody's going to be able to trace it. Anonymity. Plausible deniability. I never sent that picture. Well, because it's been erased. I never said that because it's been erased. There is a capacity for anonymity in the world today that was never available before. There are things like GECPIC. How many of you know about GECPIC? Oh, man. This is one of those wonderful new things that comes along. Don't worry, by next year there will be some new ones. GECPIC is the thing that is being set up around college campuses all over this country, and occasionally high schools here and there. And GECPIC is an anonymous posting board. You put it up, nobody knows who said it, there's no reference point, it's just stuff that you say. Very often around a college campus, it might include an observation of the weather, it might include an observation about your teacher, but it might be something mean about him or her or what I did or what I saw, or it could be any of those other things. And the whole point of GECPIC is that it is discussion with no attribution. We don't know who you are. YouTube. My 18-year-old daughter says YouTube right now is one of the prime vehicles for nasty bullying. YouTube, my goodness, cat videos. How can this be bad? Well, it can be bad because kids are posting things left and right on YouTube, and then there's the opportunity to comment on those. And the comments get ugly quickly in a lot of cases. This is one of the primary places where really mean things are being said about young people, YouTube. This is taking a good tool and perverting it, unfortunately. There's capacity for great good in many of these things, but there is also the capacity, if we don't become a more thoughtful, conscious society, there is the capacity to do harm as well. Facebook in and of itself shouldn't be too bad, because if I send you a message, you know who sent it to you, right? Well, unless I'm a 12-year-old who's smart enough to set up a false Facebook account or represent myself in some way as someone that I am not. And that's entirely easy to do. And in some cases, there are Facebook pages set up for the sole purpose of being mean about some particular topic or occasionally some particular person. You can set up a whole site that's intended to do nothing more than say mean things about your high school or say mean things about Michelle. We could also use Twitter. Fake accounts is the primary vehicle here, but some of it is just plain mean-spirited stuff that anybody can say, and you can trace who it was, but nobody cares because for the most part, nobody is looking. Anonymity is available, but not everybody even bothers to worry about it because there is so much that is going on out there in the world. With all of these things in mind, turn to that interesting, intelligent adult and say, uh-oh, how does this shape what I'm planning to do with my kids in my home? And you only get 1 minute for this. Ready, set, go. All right, let me bring your attention back. Now, should it worry us that in this corner of the room somebody is setting up a false Facebook account right now? Should it worry us that a couple of kids are going out to check Yik Yak? Do we have Yik Yak yet here? It's a busy world and a constantly changing and evolving world. I loved hearing a little bit about the school this morning because schools that are proactive about these things help a lot. They help do what perhaps is our basic job at home as parents, to help kids even understand what bullying means. I can see why a kid would be incredibly confused about what is bullying and what is not. Is the football player who knocked his girlfriend out in the elevator an example of bullying? That one ought to be kind of clear. But how about the cop who is intimidating somebody in a TV show? How about the real housewives of whatever who are being nasty in every way? Is this amusement or is this horrible bullying behavior? Helping our kids learn. Where do we see bullies in this society? And the answer is all over. Are there cops who could act like bullies in some cases? Are there kids on the street who could act like bullies in some cases? Are there teachers, not in your school, but in some schools where they haven't even had this conversation, who could act like bullies? Are there moms and dads who don't know what to do with their kids, who resort to bullying behaviors that they learned from their parents? This is not a small discussion. This is an incredibly complicated discussion, helping everybody understand where bullying can be found and where we could learn not to be bullies. First and foremost, perhaps starting in our own homes and in our own schools. That's where I'd like to start. Number 4, I would like parents to teach their kids, or for teachers to teach kids how to deal with bullying if it is something that is happening to you. When you are being mistreated, you might want to learn these 4 steps. First, step back, consider what's going on, and try to be calm and decide what to do. Number 2, if it's appropriate, try a technique like get away, ignore it, or use assertive language and tell someone to stop. I don't like being spoken to or treated in that way. Number 3, ask somebody to come and stand with you. Be a friend. We heard a little bit about that this morning. Ask people to be there with you, not as threateners or intimidators, but as a support to the kid who is being bullied. Number 4, when necessary, step out. Ask for an adult to advise you, to help you, to support you in some way, shape, or form. We need to teach these steps to kids and help them see what each of these 4 steps would look like. Every single one of these is a big piece of learning. Learning to get calm in the face of bullying. If you're self-regulated, you can figure out how to do that. But that's hard sometimes. Learning how to try your techniques, see what works. Ignore it if it's just little stuff. Move away if it's silly stuff. Ask people to come and help you if you need to deal with it. Ask for adult help if you need to and there is no other alternative. Try to handle it on your own, but when you can't, know that adults are here for that purpose, to be with you. We would also really like kids to learn not just to be bystanders, but instead to know how to step in when they see someone else being bullied. Step 1, look at the situation. Ask yourself if you'd like to be treated that way. Make a decision if somebody is being mistreated. This is not always easy. Sometimes it's play. Sometimes it's teasing. Sometimes it's kind of okay, fun, but close to the edge. When does it go over that line? Are there times when it's hard to make that decision? Well, there are times when it shouldn't be hard at all. How many of you have seen that horrible bus video from Upper New York State from 2 summers ago, where the 68-year-old grandmother who is acting as a bus monitor, have you seen that one? Does it turn your stomach like it does for me? Kids your age, middle schoolers, who are sitting there as a group of kids, both boys and girls, are teasing, physically prodding, emotionally and verbally abusing this grandmother, saying things to her about her son who committed suicide, and how they don't blame him. Anybody would commit suicide if she was their mother, and how she ought to commit suicide, and some of the most horrible, god-awful things you have ever heard in this world. And here's the part that bothers me the most. A bus full of big, strong middle school kids sat on that bus, listened to it, in one case even taped it, recorded it, and thought it was funny, or didn't step up. Where was that kid? Where was that? Stand up, young man. Where was that kid? Big, strong, with a calm voice and some strength on the inside to say, hey, stop it. That's not how we treat people. Stand up, young lady. This girl doesn't know what the word quit means. She's got some stick-to-itiveness inside of her. When she sees that kind of behavior, she would say something or ask for help. Young man, stand up. He's not big and scary. Is he strong and calm on the inside? It doesn't matter your size, your stature, the loudness of your voice. Can anyone be that strong voice for good behavior? And no one on that bus stopped that. A bus full of bystanders. That's the real issue for me. When we look at a situation, decide if someone is being mistreated. If they are, we're going to decide not to turn away. We'll step up and be there for someone. If it's safe, we will offer support. If it's not safe, we will find some help. These aren't complicated steps, are they? But they are steps that in this world today must be taught. This green book, Stand Up and Speak Up, details some of these things. This other book here, Stand in My Shoes, talks about kids learning to be empathetic and how it makes their lives better. Would you all pass these back to my 3 middle school friends back there, because I want those kids to have those books for their own libraries. And please share them with your brothers and sisters and friends and aunts and uncles and all of the rest. Last but not least, as parents, It becomes our job not just to deal with bullying. Dealing with bullying ought to be the easy part here, the simple part. If I have strong, calm kids, I can teach them a few things that will allow them to deal with misbehavior. The real issue is, do I have models of strength? Do I have models of courage? Do I have models of self-efficacy? Do I have models that live in my head, that live in my family, that live in my community, that live in my school, of what really good, respectful behavior looks like? Who are those calm, strong individuals who represent for you the kind of strength you want kids to have in the face of adversity, in the face of occasional bullying? Where are those models of strength? Some of you have extended family and friends that you bring into your life. How many of you have a grandma or a grandpa who represents this model of resilience and self-efficacy that we're talking about? How many of you have, outside of the family, extended friends that you bring in? We have this wonderful man, he's 78 years old. His name is Albert Asfor. He was born in Palestine. He's taken every single one of my kids to Palestine and the Mideast on a mission trip where they've gotten to know kids and built relationships, and those kids come and they stay in our house. And they've interacted now for years, and they have a sense of understanding of what's going on in the world that wouldn't be available otherwise. This guy, at age 70-something, is calm and strong on the inside in the way I want my kids to know. Find those people, love those people, bring them into your family, let them be around your kids. Let them see real people who represent these values and these capacities that we would like. Great books are another part of it. There is no shortage of wonderful literature about strong men and women, strong boys and girls, including my children's books, that a kid at 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 could understand as a model for the kind of strength and kindness that you would want for your kid. There are organizations out there. Is anybody familiar with the Ashoka Changemakers group? This is a group of people all around the world who are given a little bit of money through a foundation to do world-changing, socially responsible things. You want to find 200 people right now who are changing the world? There are groups like this out there right this day that are doing things that are extraordinary. One example of it is Kids for Peace. Have you ever heard of Kids for Peace? A 16-year-old girl started it. It is now a worldwide organization. It's only been 3 years since she started it. It's teaching kids here in this country and around the world to stand up for peaceful and respectful behavior through very specific projects in their community. A 16-year-old girl was the motivation for starting Kids for Peace. I want my kids to know stories like this of great kids, great men, great women who are making a difference in the world, because sometimes the stories we're getting from internet world or television world or video game world are not telling those kinds of positive, strong stories. Our families and our schools can choose to build a culture based on this set of models and principles. When I think of resilience, when I think of self-regulation, when I think of people who are unlikely to be bullied, and certainly not likely to bully others, one of the examples that live in my head is an old guy that I used to know. I used to live up in the northern part of the lower peninsula of Michigan. You from Canada know about the mitten. And I used to live right up there in the Petoskey area, beautiful area. And I had a small farm. I had a 20-acre farm, and it was kind of a hobby farm, and I was a high school special ed teacher during those years. And there was an old guy down the road that I used to go down and visit every once in a while by the name of Mr. Rinkovich. Mr. Rinkovich was in his late 70s when I first got to know him, and the neighbors told me that he was kind of a crabby old guy, that he wasn't very friendly. Probably wouldn't like me very much. I wouldn't like him very much, they suggested. Well, I went down to buy some grain from Mr. Rinkovich, and he had a big, strong, lean body, and he had a hand like an oak tree. And at age 78, he could take a 100-pound sack of grain and throw it up on his shoulder as easily as I could in my 30s. He was a guy who had come over from Russia when he was 12 years of age. He'd never had a whole lot of education in a school, but he was perhaps the best read and most thoughtful, deep-thinking man I have ever met in this life. I would go down to buy grain from him, and I would stand around and talk with him for an hour or two, or sometimes 3, because we loved our conversations. He had that strength of being. He came over as a 12-year-old. As an 18, 19-year-old, got married, built his own farm, cleared the land and built a farm. Remember when people did things like that? And then after a while they started to have kids, and then as his sons got older, he built farms for them, and his daughters got married, he helped build farms for them. They were all within a 20-mile radius. This guy got up every morning, he went out to work, and he was strong, and he was reliable, and he was calm, and he was one of the most thoughtful human beings on this planet. Don't you love people like this? And do they serve as models for us in our own life? How many of you remember this name? Wilma Rudolph. Oh, I only see one hand in the back. This must be a young group. Wilma Rudolph was born in the year 1940 down in Tennessee. She was the 20th of 22 children. Her mother, Blanche, worked in other people's houses and cleaned and cooked. When she had time, she was raising 22 children, but she would also work outside of the home for money. The father, Ed, was a Pullman porter on the railroads, and they were a family, and they took care of each other. When Wilma was 4 years of age, she contracted polio. Back then, polio could kill you or disable you. It was a mild bout of polio. She was somewhat affected in her gait, but she got over it. A few other childhood illnesses came along, and you could imagine with 22 kids how many times things like measles and chickenpox and diphtheria and other sorts of things came along. And then when she was 9 years of age, polio came back, and this time it came back hard. And she was incredibly physically disabled. She was crippled. She could not walk. Because she was an African-American child in Tennessee in that age, she was unable to get treatment in the local hospital. Her mother had to drive her 2 hours up to Fisk University to get her any treatment at all. And the doctors there said, the polio's bad, Wilma will never walk. She'll probably never get out of her wheelchair. But Wilma Rudolph's mother did not believe that to be true. She had an inner strength, she had a belief, she had a spirit. And every day she came home and she practiced moving Wilma's joints and moving them and massaging them and strengthening them. And every single day after a while she would get Wilma out of that chair, and in braces and with a walker, they would practice walking down the street, trying to strengthen those legs. After a while, it took almost a year. One day, they took off those braces and they threw down that walker. And for a while, Wilma could walk poorly, and then better, and then stronger. By the time she was 12 years old, she could run, and she joined the basketball team. And she was pretty good, and she ran more, and she practiced more. She became pretty good at running, and somebody on the track team invited her to join in high school. By the time she was 16, she was good enough so that she was invited to join the U.S. Olympic running team. And she qualified, and she won a bronze medal in the 4x100 relay. 4 years later, at age 20, she was the fastest woman in the world. She won 3 gold medals, the 100 meter, the 200 meter, and the 4x100 meter. The fastest woman in the world. Why do I tell you this story? Do I think Wilma represents a model of resilience? Yeah. But who's my real model of resilience here? I think of Wilma's mom and dad, but especially her mom. Raising 22 kids, working in other people's homes, driving that kid every week up to Fisk University to get all the help she could to help her beautiful daughter become strong, and then finally strong enough to walk, and then finally strong enough to run, and then finally running with the speed of the wind and being the fastest woman in this whole darned world. Look to yourselves. Do you have some of that strength on the inside? And are your children learning to have that strength on the inside? And if they do, will they be those calm, strong people that can handle those interesting things that are going to come along in the modern world that we might call bullying? Will they handle the kid that acts mean to them in the hallway or acts mean to them on the internet? And my guess is, the answer is yes. I've written a few books about these things. One's called The Juice Box Bully. Turned out to be the best-selling book in the world on bullying for all of 2011 and 12. That was a good thing. This book here is the best-selling book right now in the world among all book genres on the subject of empathy. Glad to hear that. This one is my newest one. It teaches kids how to stand up, both for themselves and for others, in an appropriate but strong way. This book's for parents. It teaches parents how to deal with strong-willed children. And if you can do all those things for strong-willed children, the less strong-willed kids are a relative snap. And this one's for teachers, trying to teach teachers how to create that culture in their classroom where we set firm limits, but we do it in that loving, respectful way. We become that model for kids of knowing how to set limits in a way that is both respectful and empathetic towards other people. I do this work because of people like you, who I see not just as parents here today, I see as leaders in this community. Is there a lot of work to be done along the lines of what we've been discussing today? Does everybody have one idea from today that is the most important idea that you can kind of hold in the back of your thoughts for a while until you figure out what to do with it? What's your one biggest takeaway from today?
Being a model.
Being a model of that calm, strong parent. Your one biggest takeaway from today? Perseverance being one of them. One key takeaway for you.
The first thing I thought is being calm.
Calm. Not being that crazy, angry parent, but that calm. We don't be the strong, angry parent, do we? We want to be that strong, calm parent. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. It was a real pleasure to be with you. Thank you all.